why scarcity was programmed into the future. For most of history, scarcity was enforced by power. Kings, governments, institutions deciding what was rare and what was not. Then, for the first time, scarcity was written into code. Unchangeable, unnegotiable, indifferent to human desire. That decision altered the future of money forever. To understand why programmed scarcity matters today, we have to look at what scarcity used to mean. Gold was scarce because it was hard to extract. Paper was scarce because authorities limited supply. Both relied on trust in whoever controlled them. Over time, that trust eroded. Supplies expanded. Promises bent. Scarcity became flexible when pressure demanded it. Digital systems made the problem worse. Replication was effortless. Files copied infinitely. Scarcity vanished online. Money followed the same path. Numbers increased. Balances expanded. Value diluted quietly. The solution was enforcement. It was inevitability. Programmed scarcity removed choice. No committee could vote to increase supply. No emergency could justify exceptions. The rules were fixed at inception. That rigidity felt extreme, even reckless. Why design a system that couldn't adapt? Because adaptability had always been the weakness. Every flexible system eventually yielded to pressure. Every promise of restraint broke under stress. This system refused that compromise. It chose predictability over discretion, rules over authority. Scarcity became mathematical, not political, not emotional, not negotiable. And in doing so, it transformed scarcity from a promise into a guarantee. That guarantee would soon collide with human behavior in unexpected ways. Because once scarcity is absolute, every decision becomes irreversible, and the future starts demanding discipline. Once scarcity was fixed, incentives shifted immediately, not dramatically, but fundamentally. Every participant now understood the rules. There would only ever be so much. No sudden expansions, no quiet adjustments, no emergency overrides. This changed how people behaved. Saving felt different. Spending felt heavier. Time became part of calculation. In flexible systems, delay is punished. Inflation erodes value. Holding feels risky. Movement feels necessary. Here, delay was rewarded. Patience carried weight. Long-term thinking replaced urgency. That psychological shift mattered more than price. People began measuring value across years, not moments. Scarcity turned time into an ally, but fixed supply introduced tension. If demand grew and supply didn't, volatility became unavoidable. Prices had to absorb pressure. There was no other release valve. Critics called it dangerous. An economy that couldn't expand supply would amplify inequality. Early adopters would benefit disproportionately. Latecomers would struggle. Supporters accepted that cost. They argued inequality already existed, hidden, inflated away. This system made it visible instead. No one could pretend scarcity was fair, but it was honest. As adoption increased, so did the weight of early decisions. Coins lost were never replaced. Mistakes permanently reduced supply. Scarcity intensified through human error. This created a strange dynamic. Lost strength and value. Neglect increased importance. Every forgotten key tightened scarcity further. Unlike managed systems, there was no authority smoothing outcomes. No policy tools. No adjustments. Only math. That rigidity forced a reckoning. People had to confront trade-offs directly. Comfort versus certainty. Flexibility versus predictability. Scarcity wasn't just programmed into supply. It was programmed into behavior. And behavior, once shaped by inevitability, doesn't easily revert. As scarcity tightened, pressure surfaced everywhere. Not just in markets, but in mindset. Every cycle amplified emotion. Rallies felt euphoric. Corrections felt existential. When supply can't respond, price becomes the only language demand speaks. That language was harsh, unforgiving, volatile. Critics pointed to instability. They argued money should smooth human behavior, not magnify it. That fixed scarcity turned markets into stress tests. for collective psychology. They weren't wrong. But supporters saw a different lesson. Volatility wasn't the disease. It was a symptom, a reflection of uncertainty meeting certainty. Human systems are elastic. They stretch. They bend. They adapt. The system refused. It forced discipline onto behavior that had never practiced restraint. Speculation surged, then collapsed, again and again. Each cycle burned away excess. Each downturn punished impatience. Slowly, patterns emerged. Those who treated scarcity as noise suffered. Those who respected it endured. Time filtered belief. Meanwhile, institutions reacted cautiously. Some dismissed fixed supply as impractical. Others hedged quietly. Allocations appeared. Long-term strategies formed. Scarcity demanded acknowledgement. This wasn't adoption driven by excitement. It was adoption driven by risk management, by the realization that something truly scarce behaves differently under pressure. Program scarcity also exposed policy limits. Traditional tools relied on expansion, stimulus, liquidity, flexibility. None of them applied here. This asset didn't respond to authority. It responded to time. And time has a way of humbling. Every assumption humans make about control, scarcity wasn't just about limiting supply. It was about limiting excuses. And once excuses disappear, behavior becomes the only variable left. The final realization was uncomfortable. Scarcity didn't create stability. It demanded responsibility. There were no tools to soften outcomes, no levers to pull, no authority to blame, only rules enforced exactly as written. Program scarcity stripped away narratives. It exposed behavior without filters. Fear, greed, patience, discipline. Every cycle revealed who understood the rules and who hoped they would change. They never did. That permanence redefined value, not as something managed, but as something endured, something that rewarded foresight and punished shortcuts. This wasn't kinder money. It was clearer money. Clarity doesn't remove pain. It removes confusion. And confusion had always been a convenient hiding place. In the system, consequences were visible, immediate, irreversible. You couldn't dilute mistakes away. You had to carry them. That weight changed decisions. It slowed impulses. It favored planning. It made time matter again. Scarcity programmed into the future forced humanity to confront a truth it had avoided for generations. Limits exist. They can't always be negotiated. They can't always be postponed. Sometimes they must simply be respected. Whether that makes the system better or more dangerous depends on how humans respond. Because once scarcity is absolute, there is nowhere left to hide from behavior, only outcomes. What the design also revealed was how deeply human systems had come to depend on the ability to postpone consequences. Debt extended the present into the future. Monetary expansion transferred costs forward in time. Everywhere, the structural assumption was the same, that limits could be managed, that constraints were negotiable, that tomorrow could absorb what today refused to address. Program scarcity removed that assumption entirely. It said, quietly and permanently, that the future was already written, not by human decision, by mathematics. And mathematics does not negotiate. That confrontation was uncomfortable for institutions that had built their entire operational logic around the ability to intervene. Central banks, finance ministries, international bodies, all of them dependent on discretion, all of them now facing an asset that made discretion irrelevant, not hostile to them, simply indifferent. And indifference from something this significant turned out to be far more unsettling than opposition. Sometimes the smallest shift in perspective becomes the beginning of a new future. The philosophical argument underneath program scarcity was not primarily about economics. It was about honesty. Every managed currency system carries within it an implicit promise that the people managing supply will exercise restraint, that emergency powers will be used sparingly, that the flexibility built into the system will not be exploited. beyond what circumstances genuinely require. History shows how rarely that promise survives, not because the people managing these systems are dishonest, but because the pressure to use available tools is relentless and cumulative. Each exception seems reasonable in isolation. Each emergency seems genuinely exceptional. The pattern only becomes visible in retrospect, when the cumulative effect of reasonable exceptions adds up to something that was never intended. Programmed scarcity made this argument, not through words, but through design. It removed the option, not the temptation. The option, and in doing so, it forced a different kind of trust, one that didn't require believing in the intentions of people, only in the reliability of rules. That is a profound shift, even if the shift is still being absorbed by most of the people it most affects. Why